I see this confusion in the comments all the time. Someone says SCHD pays them 15%. Another investor says that's impossible because SCHD only yields around 4%. And then somebody else says their income ETF still yields 10%, even though their payments are dropping. Who's right? Actually, all three can be right. Today, I'm going to show you the difference between yield, yield on cost, and distributions using real examples, so you can understand exactly what your portfolio is paying you. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Simply Money. This video is a little different, but don't turn away yet. There's a lot of confusion around yield and yield on cost and distributions and what's actually happening. And I wanted to provide this to make sure folks, as you're watching the videos that I do with my spreadsheets and all the data going on, that you understand some of the underlying terms and what it actually means, because we're here to help educate you and provide information for you to make the best financial decisions you can make to reach your financial goals and to become financially free. Why? So we can do what we want, when we want, with whom we want. That's our goal, financial independence. This is not financial advice. This is for informational and educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence. So one of the biggest mistakes investors make is focusing on a single number. They look at yield, or they look at yield on cost, or they look at monthly distributions. The problem is these are three completely different measurements. By the end of this video, you'll understand what yield actually measures, what yield on cost measures, and why SCHD can produce a double-digit yield on cost, why some income ETFs can maintain similar yields while your income actually falls, and which number I think matters most for retirement and income investors. Let's dive into some examples here. First, we're going to explain what is a yield. We're going to look at this simple table. If I have a $25 share price and the annual distribution is $1, the yield is 4%. But if the price drops to $20 and it continues to pay that $1 annual distribution, the yield is now 5%. The yield changes because the yield is based on the distribution against the price that it's distributing from. If it goes to $33 for price and continues to pay that $1, now your yield is 3.03%. Notice the distribution never changed. The fund still paid exactly $1. The yield changed only because the share price changed. Yield is a moving target because the denominator, the share price, is constantly changing. For me, with certain funds, this helps me choose, is it a good time to buy? If the distribution has been steady or increasing, and I see the yield going really high compared to its norm, let's take SCHD, for example. It's typically around 3.5% yield, but it did get well over 4% when the price dropped during the pandemic. That's showing to me it's an undervalued share price and I want to buy more. Whereas if the yield is showing 2%, it hasn't caught up to what the appreciation is, I may want to hold off before I buy. So for yield, it can be a good indicator of when I want to buy into a fund. Now I want to explain yield on cost. We have a starting investment of $10,000 into SCHD, 4% yield. Income equals $400. Now fast forward 10 years. As dividends growing, we drip it, we buy more shares. Your income now is $1,500 annually. $1,500 divided by $10,000 that you initially invested equals 15%. That's your yield on cost, the yield that it's paying on the cost that you put in there. Now, if you're making continual contributions, that has to be factored in based on the price you paid at the time you dollar cost averaged. And a lot of brokerages will have yield on cost as part of what they share with you in their dashboards. So to understand what that metric is, this is the example. See, SCHD isn't yielding 15%. My original investment is producing income equal to 15% of what I paid years ago. Now, Warren Buffett's the greatest example of this with Coca-Cola. Initial investment, now these are big dollars, but the percentages will be the same. Initial investment, $1.3 billion. He owns 400 million shares. The average cost per share was $3.25. It currently pays an annual dividend of $2.12. So his annual dividend income is $848 million. But here's the thing, the yield on cost is 65%. I know those numbers are astronomical, but let's just say you put $1,300 in Coke, you'd have whatever fraction of shares, your yield on cost would still be 65%. It's based on your initial investment versus how much the yield is now, versus how much the distribution is now. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about yield on cost. It's not always what you're starting at, it's where you finish. Now, let's talk about why high-income ETFs create even more confusion. You don't want to miss this. This is the most important part investors miss. We're going to look at CHPY, CHPY, as an example. Right now, it's doing great, but we don't know what it'll do, so I'm going to use this one, a fan favorite, just to show what could happen and what does happen with a lot of funds. They operate very similar. So let's say year one, price is $25. Distribution is $2.50. And I know this is not accurate. I'm using it as an example. The numbers are different, but the process is the same. Again, year one, the price is $25. Distribution, $2.50. That equals a 10% yield. But say year two, the price drops to $20 a share. Now your distribution is $2. The yield is still 10%. Did your income go up, stay the same, or fall? It obviously fell by 20%. The yield stayed the same because both the share price and distribution declined together. And that's what happens a lot with these high-yielding funds that you look at and that we share. And I want you to be very aware of that when you're looking and we're sharing our data, that just because something's paying a yield doesn't mean your income's going to remain the same. And that is something, as the share price falls, oftentimes those distributions will fall with them. So you're still getting a 10% yield or 30% yield, whatever the case might be. But the amount you're getting the yield on has dropped drastically. That's why the Simply Money drip score and income versus decay ratio sheet is so valuable. It helps you identify what funds are actually worth being in. So check that out. You can get a copy in the link below at the Buy Me a Coffee in the description. Let me give you an analogy. Let's pretend we have a rental property. Imagine you own a $200,000 rental property generating $20,000 annually. That's a 10% yield. Now the property value falls to $160,000. Let's say 2008, 2009 housing bubble. Rent falls to $16,000. You still have a 10% yield, but you're collecting $4,000 less every day. That's exactly why retirees should pay attention to distributions, not just yield. One of the reasons why I love SCHD as part of the core of my portfolio is because their yield fluctuates based on the share price. The distributions, the dividends, have consistently grown by about 10 to 12% annually. That, to me, is what I'm after. That helps stabilize some of the other funds, maybe like QQQI, where they may drop in income a little bit, but they're providing me a higher income, so it provides me a nice balance. So what matters most? That's the question people ask me all the time. Is growth better? Is dividend growth better? Distributions, income better? Well, for growth investors, and I would say those who are young or have high risk tolerance throughout retirement, primary metric, total return. That is all that really matters. I want the most I can get. I don't care if it's coming through yield. I don't care if it's coming through appreciation or a combination. Primary metric, total return. Now, if you're a dividend growth investor, something like SCHD, you have two primary metrics: dividend growth and yield on cost. My yield on cost with SCHD is approaching 9%. The money I've invested is yielding me 9% and growing. So that is my primary metric that I watch, my dividend growth and my yield on cost. Now, how about retirement income investors? I need income. What is my primary metric? Actual income received. If you're paying bills with your portfolio, percentages don't pay your electric bill. Actual dollars deposited into your account do. So make sure you understand what your goal is. I have people all the time, and this is no dig on anyone. We all have to learn, and I'm constantly learning new things to get better and understand things better, but we have to understand, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? If I was 25 years old, I would be focused probably purely on growth, maybe a little bit of dividend growth thrown in there. But I have years and years before I'm going to deploy it and need it. I'm at the point now, I'm more focused on dividend growth with income. And so I'm balancing those. Some people just want pure income. So you have to know what it is your goal is and what type of funds achieve that. That's why we're here on this channel, to try to help provide that information. Identify your goal. I have people ask me in comments, what should I be invested in? And I always respond, there's so many more questions I need to ask. I've had some people say they're just asking what the best fund is. Well, that's like me asking, can I retire today? That depends. How much money do you have? How much income does it generate? How much do you need to live on? What's your risk tolerance? What other sources of income do you have? There's lots of questions to ask when investing. And with yield on cost, and distributions, you have some questions you should be asking. So remember, SCHD, yield fluctuates, income rises, yield on cost rises. CHPY, yield relatively stable, income fluctuates, yield on cost depends on distribution trend. SCHD with DRIP, share count rises, income rises faster, yield on cost explodes over time. The next time someone tells you an ETF pays 15%, ask one simple question. Are you talking about current yield, yield on cost, or actual distributions? Because those three numbers can tell three very different stories. And understanding the difference could completely change how you evaluate your income portfolio. Before you leave, comment below. When you evaluate an ETF, what's the first number you look at? Yield on cost, total return, or monthly income? I'd love to see how everyone approaches it. Leave those comments. There's no right answer. We're just curious what you look at and why you do that. Leave those comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel out. I appreciate all that you do. Again, if you want any of the spreadsheets from our channel, they're down in the link below at Buy Me a Coffee. Again, thanks for all the support. We'll see you next time on Simply Money.